Today in history, in 1937, the German automaker Volkswagen was founded to mass produce a low-priced people's car. The company was originally operated by a Nazi organization.
Welcome to What the Fuck History, where we discuss the wackiest and weirdest things that make us say, well, what the fuck history. I am your host, Zachary, and if there's one thing I love almost as much as cowboys, it's pirates.
My name's Megan, and fun fact, my first car was a 1998 Volkswagen Jetta that was a standard and ran off of diesel and sounded like a little truck.
And I'm Matt. Today I learned that I'm older than the first reported sighting of the chupacabra. While there are reports of fields of goats being killed as early as the 1970s, the first ever drawn depiction of the chupacabra didn't make its way into the public sphere until 1995. And I was born in 1990.
Dang!
Congratulations.
Right?
The Cholupacabra's pretty fucking new, huh?
I am older than the enchilada cabra.
And the enchilada cabra.
enchilada.
Damn.
The Burrito Barbra.
I appreciate the effort
Barbra.
there, Megan.
Just, this is Burrito Barbra. She brings burritos on Tuesday.
My Burrito Barbra is my fucking burrito hookup. Don't tell nobody about Burrito Barbra.
Guys, Barbara in accounting is also known as Burrito Barbra.
Burrito Barbra.
She brings a burrito every Tuesday.
Every day.
Every single day.
It
She
smells-
microwaves a fucking burrito in the microwave at work.
It smells up the break room. You guys all had different names for the chupacabra. I didn't.
The enchilada cabra. The
Burrito cabra.
Burrito Barbra.
The Burrito Barbra.
I think you made a new Pokemon just now. the Burrito Barbra.
The Burrito Barbra.
It's just a sentient
Burrito Barbra,
burrito.
I choose you.
It's just a pile of beans.
It's like, what's that one? Muck?
Oh my god.
Yeah,
it looks
it's-
just like muck reskinned to be just a pile of beans. Just a mountainous
baked
pile of beans.
And its main attack is refry.
Yes.
Refry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh goodness.
Anyway.
All right, everyone. Our strikes have been set to 0. A game of rock, paper, scissors pretended to be played. The order for tonight is me, followed by Megan, followed by Zach.
Yes.
I didn't like that. I'm not going to do that
Zatch
again.
Do we all remember that anime?
What?
Zatch Bell?
No, dude.
No.
Are you just making up new words again?
Nah, brother. It's where they fought with small children. They were like Pokemon.
Burrito Barbra.
Oh my
what
god,
the
no.
fuck? Burrito
I have
Barbra
no
is
idea.
Zatch Bell. I need to look this up now. Zatch Bell?
Yeah, go. It's spelled exactly like Zach.
Zatch
but
Bell.
Zatch.
It's a manga series
Yeah,
known in
it's
Japan
also an anime.
as
Well, of course it's known in Japan. It's a manga
Konjiki
series.
no Gash.
Oh.
Yep, that's exactly
A
it.
manga series.
Oh, it's Zatch.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Later adapted
Oh.
into anime. The premise.
they fought with small children.
Story takes place during the modern times in which mystical creatures with supernatural powers called Mamodo descend to Earth from a parallel Mamodo world. Every 1,000 years, 100 Mamodo are sent to compete in a tournament for the kingship of their world. Each Mamodo carries a spell book that seals away their powers and requires a human companion to read aloud in order to cast them for... Jesus Christ, you're not joking.
No, I'm not joking. They're children.
So that
they're like
these children
small...
are apparently only allowed to attack if their human companion reads aloud so that they can cast spells.
Yeah,
Hey,
just like
my weird alien friend, go fuck him up.
Only one human is allowed to read from that Mamoto's book, whereupon he or she becomes its book owner and partner. So it's not like you have to catch them all, but you do
You just gotta catch one, and then you got a weird guy to fuck your friends up.
You do want your little
you
weird
got a weird
guy.
guy.
Now that we're done with that
Yeah, you
tangent,
gotta-
though, I think we should probably start the real podcast.
Yeah, sure.
I could talk about Zatch Ball forever, but
Zatch Ball, Burrito Barbra,
Zatch Ball forever, Burrito Barbra. Okay. So this, I do want to preface this story by saying that I had absolutely zero interest in doing any real work today because I took the day off work.
I love that for you.
And so I decided to go with some low-hanging fruit that we've mentioned before, but we haven't delved into in any real depth. However,
I'm always a fan of low-hanging fruit.
yeah, I just want to say that if you've ever taken a Psych 101 course, or even Intro to Psychology, or Intro to Ethics, or Intro to Villainy,
or if you looked up psychology on the internet.
if you looked up psychology on the internet, if you walked by a psych department, you probably have heard about this experiment. But
If your friend took psychology through osmosis, you know.
if your friend took psychology and you had to hand them a book once, you know this experiment. And I think, like, in a future episode where I don't feel like doing any work at all, I will end up doing, like, a whole list of unethical experiments and just rapid fire, like we've done with sex toys and, like, other things in this podcast. And we'll see if I can just knock them all out at once. Maybe we'll do a tier list. But today I'm talking about the Stanford prison experiment, and I'm only really doing it because I think about a month or 2 months ago, I shared a picture of Philip Zimbardo, who is the researcher who is responsible for this experiment, and
Just
said
a travesty.
that at some point I need to talk about this man who looks like a villain.
Yes.
So the Stanford prison experiment was conducted in 1971 at Stanford University, which is why it's called the Stanford prison experiment. The experiment was, as I mentioned, started by a gentleman by the name... he's not a gentleman. He's a doctor. Named Philip Zimbardo, who, despite looking like a wizard and an evil mastermind, was just a social psychologist. He created the prison experiment with the intention to display that when someone's given a role or a position of authority, they assume that role. He sort of was trying to construct a situation whereby someone who does not have any power is given a position of power and then kind of let to do, but like seeing how people, I guess, take on the attributes of their assigned role. So in essence, he's trying to prove the adage, like part of his experiment is trying to prove the adage that absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. But, he's also trying to like see if you were to put someone in a position and sort of tell them the way their life is, whether they accept that or not. The way that he went about this was by gathering 24 healthy gentlemen from around the school.
Healthy.
He sent out...
Healthy.
Huh?
Gentleman.
Huh?
Healthy.
Well,
gentleman.
so for
Healthy
every,
gentleman.
like... For every psychological experiment, and like, you kind of have to run through the gamut of, like, if you're using human... First of all, like, the first hiccup here is that this is a human test, which is, I think, more often than not unethical, depending on what you're doing with the humans, especially in 1971. But you have to go through like a series. They had to go through a series of questions to judge their mental health, essentially, to make sure that they were of sound body and mind. Jesus Christ, dude.
You're good.
Are Are you having?
So,
Are you okay?
huh? Yeah, no, I'm fine. I think I just had a stroke.
Okay.
Or something's being stroked.
Maybe later. Let's get on with the story.
So every person had to go through this questionnaire. From there, they were deemed fit to participate or they weren't. And then from there further, they were, given a personality test to kind of see where they land on like a scale of this, that, the other. And then they were sorted into whether they'd be prison guards or prisoners. The basement of the psych wing at Stanford was converted into a makeshift prison. It's too much to like write down without me actually copying, so I'm just gonna read from the Wikipedia because it's easier.
Okay.
The experiment was conducted in a 35-foot section of the basement of Jordan Hall, Stanford Psychology Building. The prison had 2 fabricated walls, one at the entrance of the cell, and each cell was 7 by 10 feet. They were unlit, and it was intended to house 3 prisoners and had a cot with a mattress sheet and a pillow for each prisoner. So, yeah. That's how the rooms were set up. So I kind of want to just harp on the fact that Philip Zimbardo looks like an absolute maniac, but I would be digressing.
He does.
Uh,
But also, most men in the 70s all looked like serial killers.
yeah, no, for sure. I mean, he more so than other. I posted it in the in the chat earlier.
Yeah, no, I saw him, but like all men in the 70s either look like they are about to sexually assault you
Or are already sexually assaulting you.
or all serial killers.
Okay.
Fair.
I will push back against that.
What part? The serial killer part or the sexual assault?
Because you also have the height of men's fashion in the Tom Selleck mustache and crop top. Okay?
He's got a good point.
I don't...
There were some
have to look
70s
up
men
what-
fashion that was awful.
Although
Don't
there
get me
are
wrong.
some times where I look at old pictures of Tom Selleck and feel like he's sexually assaulting me with his eyes.
I have to look up what Tom Selleck looks like in the 70s.
That's fair. While you do that, I'm going to keep
because
talking about
I
my
don't
story, if
remember.
that's okay.
That is the deepest V I have ever seen of a shirt.
Hell yeah!
She's got a picture of him from what, Miami Vice?
Probably.
You're
and
like,
Magnum
he's not
PI,
hiding
excuse
anything.
Magnum
you.
PI, that's right. Yeah, I couldn't remember.
He's
which one he
hiding
was in.
nothing. He has nothing to hide.
Sorry, continue, Matt.
So anyways, the guards were given specific instructions that they were not allowed to physically abuse any of the prisoners. But aside from that, they were within their rights to behave as a guard would, with the main directive being not to let any of the prisoners escape. And the experiment was scheduled to run for 14 days. And again, because it's a lot of information to kind of shoot out, I'm going to read sort of the day-to-day off Wikipedia, and then we can talk about it afterwards.
Okay.
So the experiment started technically on Sunday, August 15th, but the prison cells were set up on Saturday, August 14th. So on Sunday, August 15th, which was day 1, the participants who had been assigned as prisoners were arrested by the Palo Alto police at their homes, or wherever they were. The participants were not informed that they were going to be arrested in this way because the researchers wanted it to be... The researchers. Philip, this fucking guy, wanted it to be as much of a surprise as possible.
Yeah, it was merely Philip.
It was just
It
Philip.
was just Philip.
Just Philip. He was all by himself. Zimbardo had written out like a contract for the participants to sign, and them being fully arrested was a breach of his ethical contract that he had made all the participants sign.
Yep.
Why was it a breach?
Okay, so like I I don't have that, but I would assume that he had like a clause in his.
So, the things about experiments, especially with psychological experiments, is the psychological experiment is not supposed to leave the bounds of the experiment, and by
Right.
having them arrested in their own homes, it breaks the actual
Yeah, they were
line
outside of the
between
experiment.
where the experiment begins and where real life is.
Right. So they were also they were
okay.
arrested with charges of like armed robbery, burglary. The Palo Alto police did full booking procedures on the prisoners.
Oh,
So they brought them in.
that's kind of crazy.
They read their Miranda rights. They fingerprinted. They took mugshots. And then they got transported to the jail, which, as I mentioned, was in the basement of the college. They were strip searched, and then they were given their inmate identification numbers, and they were given their uniforms. The prisoners were put in sort of these uncomfortable smocks. They weren't wearing underwear, and they had caps that were made of ladies' stockings. Guards, as I mentioned, were instructed to do anything that they felt like they could to debase the prisoners. So instead of calling them by names, they would call them by numbers. So all that good shit.
Yeah.
The prisoners were greeted by the warden, who was Zimbardo's teaching assistant. As Zimbardo himself had set himself up as the superintendent of the prison. He
Can you imagine being someone's teaching assistant and they're like, "Hey, what are you doing this
Hey, I
weekend?"
want to do some
And it's like,
unhinged shit.
So,
well, it's just like, I need you to pretend to be a warden.
prison
I need
warden.
you to make it convincing. It's like, oh, is this part of my graduate study course? It's like, yeah.
so
That's what it is.
this is where, for me at least, the issue of this entire experiment happens.
The strip searching.
No. I mean, yes, but like that was going to happen.
The being arrested in their homes?
The fact that Zimbardo puts himself inside the experiment.
Yeah. Yeah,
is
or
the
like gives
largest
himself a
breach of
role.
ethics.
Yeah, gives himself a
Yes,
role in the
gives himself
experiment.
a role within the experiment is the largest
Right.
breach of ethics I have ever fucking heard of.
Right. So,
Well, it's the 70s.
the warden does the whole process of explaining the seriousness of the prisoners' crimes, and then he puts them in their cells. So day 2, guards begin referring to prisoners by their identification numbers. They confine them to their cells. And at 2:30 in the morning, the prisoners started to rebel against the guards' wake-up calls and their whistles and their clanging batons, trying to, like, wake them up. So, again, this was just a study in, like, how well people fit into their roles, and almost at jump, the guards were antagonizing the prisoners because they were waking them up at 2:30 in the morning by, like, smacking batons against the cages. And everything like that.
If I was a guard, and a pretend guard, if you will, and my fellow pretend guards were like, "Hey, you want to get up and start bothering people?" I'd be like, "Sit the fuck down. It's 2:30 in the morning. I'm tired."
Yeah.
Like, we can bully people at a reasonable, godly
See,
hour.
but that's the thing. Like, the whole entire
Like-
experiment is the bullying.
Yeah.
Because the guards were given...
So what? Why are they bullying me? Why are they? I'm a guard.
What?
Don't bully me. That's what I'm saying. So I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
if
Oh yeah, if
my
you were a
fellow
guard,
guards,
if my fellow officers.
why are they bullying me at getting me up at 2:30 in the morning? I'd be like, no, we can bully them at 10 a.m.
Well, they did shifts, I think.
Yeah.
So, anyways, the prisoners started to rebel against the guards. They took off their number tags. They took off their caps. They started to insult the guards. They charged the guards. And in response to this, the guards sprayed them with fire extinguishers to reassert control. They had 3 backup guards that got called in to regain control of the prison. The guards removed all of the prisoners' clothing, removed the mattresses, and sentenced the main instigators to time in the hole. They essentially, tried to make it, pitting all the prisoners against the ones that spoke up or tried to, lead this rebellion. That was day 2. On day 3...
Day 2.
In order to restrict further acts of disobedience, the guards separated and rewarded prisoners who had minor roles in the rebellion. The 3 spent time in the good cell where they received clothing and bed and food that was denied to the rest of the jail population. So that lasted for 12 hours. And then they were sent back to their cells that had the beds removed. Throughout all this, the guards are still humiliating prisoners. So they're making them do push-ups. They're making them count off. They're making them do, a bunch of all this other stuff. They're denying them access to a bathroom and forcing them to pee in buckets. So pretty much, all the stuff you'd expect.
Heinous garbage.
And day 3 is where we see the first actual the first prisoner having to leave the experiment. A gentleman by the name of Doug Corpy, prisoner 8612, left after 36 hours because he had a mental breakdown while he was experiencing this. He said that he couldn't take it anymore. He said he couldn't stand another night, and the research assistant that was part of this did say that he should be let free. And in an interview that Corpy did in 2017, he said that he had been faking it.
Faking that he wanted to go home?
Faking that he was having a mental breakdown because he wanted to go study for one of his finals.
Oh, good for him.
So
he's like, honestly, dude, this is taking up way too much of my time.
He did say that he regretted not filing a false imprisonment charge. And then I guess Zimbardo also responded to that by saying that he needed to treat the breakdown as if it was real to release the prisoner. But he thinks that Corpy had a real mental breakdown and that he was lying about lying. So that was day 3. Day 4.
Yay.
Guards divided prisoners based on their good or rebellious behavior again. The inmates started to distance themselves. The prisoners started to distance themselves from one another. Basically, the rioters, the people that were still trying to be rebellious, believed that the other prisoners were snitching on them. And the ones that were, mostly good, also thought that they were being informed on by the other prisoners. So since everybody wanted their beds and wanted to be able to sleep on their cots and their clothes, they started to treat the people who had been rebellious as outcasts. This day as well, prisoner 819 began showing symptoms of distress. He began crying in his cell. A priest was brought in to speak with him, but he declined to speak and asked for a medical doctor. And then Philip himself had to come in and assure the child. I don't know if they're not children; they're college students, but had to assure this person that they have a real identity, and released him from this experiment. And while he was doing that, the guards were giving all the other inmates shit.
Don't look over
"We're
there.
not gonna stop."
We're not doing anything horrible. Don't look over there. You're a person. Trust me.
Don't break character.
Don't break
They're
character.
not people. You are.
How are we going to?
Um,
How are we going to get into next semester's play and pass our theater minor if we break character
Right.
now?
So that was day 4. Day 5 was visitation day. This day was scheduled for visitations by friends and family of the prisoners in order to simulate the actual prison experiment. Or experience, rather. Zimbardo and the guards made visitors wait for long periods of time to see their loved ones. Only 2 visitors could see any one prisoner, and only for 10 minutes while a guard watched. Parents began to grow concerned about their son's well-being and whether they had enough to eat. Some parents left the prison experiment with plans to contact lawyers to gain the early release of their children. On the same day, on day 5, Zimbardo's colleague, Gordon H. Bauer, arrived to check on the experiment and questioned Zimbardo about what the independent variable of the research was.
Like what he was trying to
Yeah.
prove. He's like, so
what are you
hey,
doing
bud,
here?
I'm not trying to. What are you doing?
Hey, I've got a question
Like-
that should have been asked before we let you turn the basement of the school into a prison. What are you doing?
What the fuck are you doing, bud?
What are you up to
Hey,
down
bud,
here,
what are
bud?
you
The
doing?
lights are all off. Why is everyone tied up?
What? Why are
Why-
these prisoners naked and covered in their own shit and piss?
What's going on here, bud?
Hey, bud.
What's going? Hey,
Hey,
bud. This is a school.
Hey, bud. This is the basement of a school. These are real walls that your kids have shit in. So anyways,
So anyway,
so his colleague asks
board
him what
meetings. We
what
have a
his
department meeting tomorrow.
Huh?
Like, can you imagine? It's just like, are you coming to the department head meeting tomorrow?
It's like, no, I'm
busy
watching children shit in buckets.
He's like, I'm busy down here. I'm sorry. Tell the department head that I can't make
So-
it.
Tell
a
the
woman-
department heads I'm fucking cooking down here and leave me be.
I'm cooking.
Let him cook now.
And don't tell him I'm down here.
Don't tell anyone. Lock the door. So his colleague came and asked what he was doing. Another woman by the name of Christina Maslach visited the prison, and she was also distressed after observing the way that the guards were abusing the prisoners, forcing them to wear bags over their heads, forcing them to do push-ups, do physical exercise. She challenged Mr. Philip Zimbardo about his lack of caring and his lack of oversight and the immorality of the study. And she made it evident that, as Zach mentioned before, that him giving himself a role in the experiment had changed him as a person to, like, be the superintendent of a prison. She said that him filling this role and him being this way turned him into someone that she did not recognize and didn't like.
I'm trying to prove that if you put someone in a specific role, that they take on that role. Now I'm gonna give myself a specific role that's shitty.
Yeah. It's exactly like that. And so on day 6, Philip ended his experiment.
Oh, the first ethical choice he's made this whole time.
The first and only choice that was ethical. Due to his colleagues' objections, due to the parents' concerns, due to the increasing brutality exhibited by guards, Zimbardo decided to end the experiment on day 6. Zimbardo gathered...
Well, presumably he also, like, had to, like, get back to, like, his job.
Well, this is his job.
This was his job.
No, he's got classes.
No, but, like,
right?
if he had kept the experiment going... Well, it was August, so it wasn't like this semester hadn't started yet. But anyways, so he
has like lesson plans to
Yeah.
write or something. He's got other shit.
I have a feeling that he was doing it in his fake superintendent's office. While also pretending to be the superintendent of a prison. While also listening to the beautiful sounds of young men being tortured by other young men.
Hey,
young man.
I just want to note that none of the members of the What the Fuck History podcast endorse the torture of young men by other young men.
Yeah, we don't endorse the torture of young men in general.
Probably goes without saying,
listen,
but just had to put it out there.
It might have seemed irreverent when we started singing the YMCA.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
But
you could have figured it out, but I just wanted to make it clear. So Zimbardo gathers all the participants, so the guards, the prisoners, and the researchers. I don't know how many there were. I think there was actually a team of researchers. But he did gather them all up. He let them know that the experiment was over. And he arranged to pay them for the 6 days that the experiment lasted. They were all getting $15 a day. Which is exactly like jury duty. So Zimbardo then met and did like a debrief with the prisoners, and then he met with the guards, and then everyone came together to sort of share their group experiences. All the participants were asked to complete a retrospective. So they were supposed to film it and send it to him subsequently. And then all the participants were invited to return a week later to share their opinions and their emotions.
I'm betting it didn't go well.
Some of them were like, hey, I really didn't like when John made me take off all my clothes and then sprayed me with a fire extinguisher. And John's like, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So,
I didn't mean to do that.
In essence, what ended up happening is, like, a lot of these people had PTSD. Probably there was one particular guard that I think, if I'm remembering correctly, was nicknamed John Wayne because he looked like a cowboy. And so, like, one of the prisoners who did come back to, like, he couldn't even look the other, like, the guard in the eye. So it's really just, like, these people were tortured for 6 straight days, or 5 straight days before they were done on the 6th.
Yeah.
Except for that guy who had to go study for his final.
Yeah, that one kid had to study for his final. There is a whole portion of the Wikipedia article that talks about ethical concerns, but I think if you can't see the ethical concerns,
you're the ethical concern?
You're the ethical concern. So that's everything about the Stanford prison experiment that I feel like talking about.
I mean, if you would like to go into discussions about the Stanford prison experiment, I will discuss, because I have many thoughts and feelings.
I mean, so really, if you think about it, I think there's a way that the experiment could have worked if there had been more boundaries about, like, what the guards were allowed to do, but there's also, like, a portion of the experiment that it's just, like, he's trying to recreate the prison experience, right? Where it's like...
Yes.
You're setting up... Guards are mean in real life. Prisoners inside the prison system are mean in real life. Like, there is a hierarchy. But I think that, like, if the experiment were to be done again today, it would need to have way more, like... You're not allowed to strip people naked and have them sprayed with fire extinguishers.
I'm so glad that you said this, because my main point about the Stanford prison experiment, and many people say of, you know, if this was done today, how could you do it ethically? I fundamentally believe that there is no ethical way for you to run the prison experiment. No matter what. It is an experiment that should never be done, whether it was in whenever the original was done or in a revised setting, because prison itself is a hell of its own way. It is actually best said, in my opinion, in a book that says a lot of things really well, which is American Gods, where one character is speaking to another character about how, they talk about, like, when you get out of prison, he had, like, gotten rearrested because he didn't have his proper identification, and he yelled at the woman behind the counter at the airport, and after getting kicked out of the airport went on a bender, and he's like, the main point of the story is don't piss off bitches at airports. And another character says, are you sure that it's not specific attitudes and practices that work in a specialized environment don't work in an outside society?
Yeah.
And that's the truth of it. Like, if your whole idea is to say if someone gets a role, they adopt a role, okay, there's a better place to think of that than a prison.
Yeah.
And you should never do the experiment about being in prison.
But it also, I agree with you, I don't think there is an ethical way, like, because to find an ethical way to do it would be to negate everything that the experiment needed. I think instead of doing that, you could just observe the prison system.
Yeah.
Like, instead of doing a whole experiment where it's like we're assigning these people the role of guard, or we're assigning these people the role of prisoner, you could just go to a prison and sort of observe, like...
Well, that's not the point of the experiment.
Right.
It's taking people who
don't normally
have
act
these
in a
jobs.
way.
Yeah, they're normal people, and putting them in the position of, okay, you now have power over people.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah.
And in a way, like, even though the experiment had a lot of ethical concerns, like, it kind of did prove a point.
Oh yeah, no, it proved exactly what it set out to prove, but that doesn't, like, scientifically it did exactly what it set out to accomplish. Ethically, it is a fucking nightmare.
Yeah, but, like, there is a reason that the experiment is still, like, talked about. I mean, there's a reason that a lot of experiments like that were done in the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s and 70s are still talked about, is because, like, they were the places where we decided, okay, well, that was fucked up. We need to put morals in place.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But they proved a point. Like,
yes.
There is a reason that we still quote the studies, and it's because without, like, quote-unquote shackles of morality, like, you kind of get stuff done,
I think, yeah, and I think that is the problem, is like, and again, I might do a whole episode where we're just talking about like the unethical psychological experiments. But I think the problem is that they all did manage to prove what they were trying to prove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when I get, like if I go into a deep dive, if not, if you've been to a Psych 101 class, you know all of them. But it's like all of them did manage to prove, like this managed to prove, you know.
Yeah.
You'll
absolutely.
You'll get results.
Doesn't make it good.
Yeah, or like you'll find things out that you wouldn't normally have figured out. I mean, there's kind of a reason that like you can look back at war stories, right, and sort of figure out like the best and worst of humanity. I mean, we've said a lot of the stories here. Like you have the soccer match during World War One. That's kind of like a shining example of humanity. You know, for one night only, like we're gonna join together.
Yeah.
But then you have like, okay, we're gonna conscript some boyos into the army, and like,
yeah,
you can have the rape of Nanjing with those same boys. Like, it's the best and worst of humanity. But like in war, especially when the gloves are off, you kind of like can peel back the politeness of like rules, right?
Yeah, and science kind of. For some reason, war and science morality gets kind of fucky.
Well, I think
it's hard in science. I think it's hard to, like, walk a moral line when you are trying to figure new things out.
Yeah.
Because we haven't figured out the morals.
Well, yeah,
for
you're
new
also
things.
you're breaking new ground, and so it's like we didn't know that was unethical because we hadn't made a board.
We haven't done it
ethics
before.
Yet.
See, this is this is what's
like,
so interesting because, like, again, I talked to Liz, my partner, who is a scientist and who has to take classes on ethics in science and why it's important. So it's like, to me, this is like especially an interesting conundrum. Who is a person who enjoys philosophy?
Yeah.
And who sits there and is like, what are the moral, as you said, like moral quandaries of this
but I think like even when I was
experimentation in general.
Yeah, when I was learning about this in my psychology classes, and they were talking about like how do you make it ethical? Like, is there a way to make it ethical?
I don't think there is.
No, and
I think my main point is that there is no way to make this experiment ethical.
And I think I mostly agree with you because, again, to peel back the ethical layers of it all, then you negate what they're learning. But the question that was then posed to us in those classroom settings was, do you think the research is not valuable because it was unethical? And I think we all had to kind of like hunker down and say, no, I mean, it's obviously very valuable to have learned that if you give a person a gun and a badge and say you get to command people what to do.
You're in charge.
Not that these people were given guns and badges, but they were given batons and basically said, do everything but physically abuse these people. You know, like, you kind of figure out different things about different facets of society, but at the same time, it's like...
but I'll push back against that even. I don't think that it was valuable. Because...
What, you don't think the information is valuable?
I don't think that information that was gathered, quote-unquote, from this was valuable. Because I think that it's like... To me, it's the same idea as if you took a bunch of dynamite and blew up the side of a mountain and caused instability to the entire region and said, oh yeah, cool, we found out that there's diamond there. Or you take a small drill and you take a core sample. There was a bunch of different ways that you could have found this information that would have been less harming to human beings.
Right.
And therefore, it makes the information no longer valuable in my brain.
Right.
If it comes to a question of like needing to know the information, I'm all about being like, hey,
There are
you know,
other ways
we want
to
to know
gain the
better.
information.
But if there's a better way to gain the information, and
I
if
guess-
you think about it for more than 2 seconds and come up with that, I'm not even a scientist, I'm not even a psychologist, and I can tell you better ways to do this experiment.
Well, I think the way
Yeah.
to sort of
I think
think of it too is that we did harp on the fact that Zimbardo's colleague came down and was like, "Hey, what are we trying to do here?"
Yes.
what are we
Like,
trying
what are
to
you
do?
trying to accomplish? So again,
Well,
I do
okay,
understand the
here's-
idea of, like, needing... Sometimes you have to be like, oh shit, that was bad, but we got valuable information. In this instance, I don't think valuable information was obtained.
Yeah, and I think you're right to an extent, but then I guess I'll like also push back a little bit with you don't know that you can just take a core sample when you're like on new ground. Like sometimes you go in with blunt tools because it's kind of all that you got at the moment.
Yeah.
Like not particularly in this case, but like
There are times,
I guess
yes.
what I'm thinking there are times where like you don't have the specialized tools because you don't know how to make the specialized tools. You have the tools that you got, and then you're like, okay, we can refine the process later.
Yeah, no,
I'm not
absolutely
standing up for this.
agree there.
I'm not standing up for this experiment. I guess more what I'm thinking about is like, remember when we talked about amputations a while ago? And like, they were just like, yeah, we're just going in with like saws
Yeah.
because we didn't know that we could like save the leg by doing something else.
Mm-hmm.
So like they used the blunt tool first and then like figured out the more refined techniques.
Yeah.
And I know that like it's not apples to apples when we're talking about psychological experiments because like obviously you're like, hey, you shouldn't be mean to people. But at the same time, like, how are you going to figure stuff out?
No, I agree with you there.
I
agree that
guess.
sometimes the question of morality can't be questioned even until after you've made the boo-boo. Sometimes that's how
Yeah.
science works. It's not perfect. But I
It's
think
not
in this
perfect.
case, there was no question
yeah.
in my brain that this should have never happened.
Yeah, and like, you know, giving people like I mean, there are a bunch of like CIA experiments that happened, like giving people syphilis that like just like letting it go untreated. Like that was wrong too.
Yeah.
But I I am saying that like I think in experiments where you do try, like obviously there are still going to be ethical conundrums, but like
Yes.
sometimes you got to be like, dude, I can't ask these questions right now because I just need to like I need to get to point A before we start figuring out all the other like points.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're
at least
sitting
to
there
get to-
trying
At least
to
the ethical
theorize.
parts of this were questioned after. You know, it's not like anyone
Yes,
took this
that is-
experiment
yeah.
and went,
This
"Hey,
was
yeah,
fine.
no, I see no
All right,
problems
guys.
with this."
Yeah. Yeah, I think
I see no problem.
I think at the end of the day, science is a field where you're trying to say, hey, I need to find an answer here, and sometimes that answer is actually something completely different than what I thought. Like, that sometimes is just what happens. Like, you're like, hey, I'm looking for an iron compound, and instead I found a nickel compound. That is, like, you know, the most basic of, you know, hey, I was looking for this, but I found that. And sometimes that happens with a moral question of like, hey, I thought I went in there and I did everything morally right, and then actually this thing came up that we didn't, you know, anticipate.
Yeah.
That happens.
I mean,
for sure.
And the other thing too is like I think the brain and like the inherent questions that come up with trying to figure out how it works is always going to be difficult.
Yes. I think my biggest
But, like-
thing with this in particular is that I think at the beginning of an experiment, you should ask what issues with morality can I run into? And that was never asked here.
But they do it now.
Yes.
They do it now.
Because someone
Yeah,
fucked
and I
up
think,
so
like,
bad that they have to. Yeah.
Philip Zimbardo
Well,
tripped
yeah.
and fell on his face so other researchers could run.
Yes.
Yeah, so other people could run.
We've talked about this for a
And,
long
you
time, and I
know-
know that we could talk about it for a lot more, but you guys also came to the podcast with...
Well, I figured... Well, I don't know how you guys feel about this. I figured we could do, like, maybe one more story, and then someone could bank a story.
Yeah, I
Could do
mean,
that.
we've been talking about this for like an hour, so yeah.
For sure.
So,
Not that
do
it's
you
not a
guys wanna
valid
do that?
conversation. Like, I think it's a conversation
No,
that needs to...
it's great
needs to be
yeah, absolutely.
complex.
No, I think it's interesting.
Do you guys want to rock, paper,
Zach,
scissors
I don't
for it?
mind telling mine.
Do you want to rock,
but
paper,
it
scissors
depends
for
on
it,
if
Megan?
you- sure.
Actually,
Okay.
Megan, you said your story
ready?
wasn't a happy story, right?
Mine's not really, like, a happy story.
Then my story is a happy, fun story, in a way. So,
We might want to go
Megan,
with
you
yours.
also
Okay.
love
Then
to
I'm not...
bank stories.
yes, this is true.
I love stories.
You love
I
having
love to
extra
bank
stories
them.
in the tank.
I do love that. But I think in terms of theme, it might be okay to tell the happy story,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Yeah, maybe. Well,
So
then,
if we want to do that.
I
Yeah,
guess
let's
I
do
can
that.
launch right into it.
Launch it, baby.
I'm launching.
Ask yourself if there are any moral conundrums you might run into.
I'm launching.
Once again, doing the theme song so I don't have to edit it in there later. Guys, gals, and non-binary pals, I am once again bringing you a heinous gentleman of history.
A crimesman, a gentleman
Heinous
crimesman.
gentleman.
And much like last week, this one's for the ladies.
It's a gentleman crimeswoman.
The late.
Yeah! Tonight.
Do it for the ladies.
It's ladies' night tonight. Tonight I have I have a fine tale to weave ye about a bonny lass who liked to kill and steal. Upon a ship she did float, scoring lots of ass. Tonight
Wow.
we are talking about Anne Bonny, who is just fucking fabulous.
I know about her because of the show Black Sails.
I did not really watch Black Sails, but now that I know that Anne Bonny's in it, I might have to. So, Bonny is a lady, shrouded in mystery,
Yes.
as all women should strive to be. Megan, please confirm this.
That's true.
And therefore,
Megan strives
true.
to be shrouded in mystery at all times.
and that's what we appreciate
I
about
do.
Megan.
Is that what we appreciate?
Is that
about
what
her?
you appreciate?
Thank you both so much. So Bonnie is completely shrouded in mystery. No one actually knows where or when she was born. She wasn't baptized, and the English kept records of everyone who was baptized, and her name never comes up. So we know she wasn't baptized, and therefore we know nothing about her. Thank you, British Catholic Church. She is called an Irish pirate, but we can't actually confirm that she was Irish. Her name is technically more of a British name, but I'm going to give one to the Irish because I like them better than the British. I said it and I fucking meant it.
I do too.
There was the Charles Johnson's A General History of Pirates, which was a book that details a bunch of stories from the pirate age, but it is notoriously inaccurate in its historical telling of anything, and that includes the growing up of Anne Bonny. Despite the inaccuracy of the books, I want to tell what it says anyway, because it's too fucking fun not to wish it was true. It is said that Anne Bonny was the illegitimate daughter of an unnamed attorney whom made Anne dress like a boy, so that way, after she was born, because his wife didn't know that he had an illegitimate daughter and he wanted to run away. And so his wife was sick, he steals Anne and fucking runs.
Nice.
And the wife finds out anyway, because a wife always finds out when you run away with your illegitimate daughter dressed as a man. And the whole thing goes south.
That's true.
I can't
Anne
see
and
why
her
it
papa-
would have gone south.
Yeah, I can't see why that would have been bad at all. Anne and her papa also go south, and
Papa.
also to
Her papa.
they head south for us and never eat soggy waffles. West for them. Sorry, I have to remember my cardinal directions. They head west for them, south for us, and they make it to the province of Carolina, which was before it was split into North and South Carolina.
Nice.
As she grew up, there's not a whole lot that is said about Bonnie Ann, other than that when she became a marrying age, she was, quote-unquote, a great catch, but had a bad temper, as she was known for having a penchant for stabbing serving girls that bothered her.
I
Okay,
do that all the time.
You're supposed to treat your servers kindly.
Yeah, guys, treat your servers kindly and tip well. Don't be like Ann Bonnie and stab them. But, yeah, so Anne's dad owned a plantation, and so they had, like, a lot of servants around, and Anne would get really angry at them and attempt to stab them with knives, as you do, I guess.
As you do.
Same.
But she marries a sailor who was hoping to inherit Anne's dad's estate, but Anne's father didn't like the scummy sailor because he had a little bit of a streak of piracy in him, and so he disowns the two of them. And Anne, as I said, who stabbed servants, clearly did the only logical thing, which was set fire to her father's plantation, the bastard, and moved with her new hubby to Nassau, where the real story begins, because Bonnie meets Calico Jack. Which, I don't know if either of you know who Calico Jack is, but very
Come
famous
on,
pirate.
I've played Assassin's
No.
Creed Black Flag.
I just like the name.
It's a great name, you know? Also, Calico, great fucking pattern, you know?
Great type of cat.
Great type of cat.
She was okay.
Bonnie meets up with Calico Jack, and we never hear anything about her husband ever again. I don't
probably
know if he
stabbed him.
died. I don't know if she killed him. Who knows? Either way, he's not in the picture anymore. Move out hubby, doesn't ever have a name. In comes Calico Jack. So Bonnie,
That's fair.
Jack, and another woman named Mary Reed all gang up together and steal a sloop named the William. Because they couldn't come up with a more imaginative name for a fucking boat, I bet.
Well, it was a British boat when they stole it.
It was
right?
a British boat. Yeah, it was a
And
British boat.
the guy who named it probably named it after his son or some bullshit.
Or maybe himself. Maybe he was an asshole and just narcissistic.
Maybe he was an asshole, as the British so often are.
Colonial British, all assholes.
Yeah. Oops.
That's actually true.
Oops, all assholes.
Oops, all assholes. And so they anchor it in Nassau Harbor, and they get a dozen guys in town and say, hey, you want to go be pirates? And everyone says, fuck yeah, we're all pirates anyway. We're literally sitting in Nassau,
one
the
said
pirate
no.
haven of the Caribbean.
Everyone was just like, you know what? I don't have anything until lunch.
Yeah, I'm good for a couple of grand larcenies on the high seas if you are. So they start a stealing in the William, which they never change the name of the boat. Seems like, which that irks me more than anything.
Yeah, I would
but they start
definitely
stealing
change the
in the
name of the
Caribbean.
boat if it was called William.
Yeah. Much better names.
It also just gets confusing, too, because you're just like, all right, let's go back to William. And it's like, who?
Who? The boat.
I thought you said you were married.
Well, speaking of being married, there was a whole thing in the tabloids that claimed that Bonnie and Calico Jack were lovers of sorts, but Bonnie
Scandalous.
ended up getting the hots for Mary, because, mind you, both Bonnie and Mary dressed as men to conceal their identities, supposedly, quote-unquote. But Jack But Jack grew jealous of Bonnie being interested in another man, so Mary had to reveal that she was in fact a lady. This is absolute bullshit, as a proclamation by Governor Rogers of Jamaica to the Boston Gazette demands the arrest of the crew and mentions Bonnie and Mary by their names, so they knew that Bonnie and Mary were ladies. However, I love the whole tabloid bullshit because it's so fucking gay of two dude pirates to be absolutely into each other, and then it's like, oh wait, it's actually a lady. Oh wait, it's actually two ladies, and history will say that they were roommates.
And they were roommates.
They were best friends.
Pirates are gay as fuck, and I love them.
I think they were actually just really good friends, Zach.
Maybe. I don't know. I wasn't alive during that time. But you know what? I don't think...
I wasn't around.
I think they were really good friends in more ways than one. You know? Either way.
Let's not make assumptions.
Let's not make assumptions. However, Mary and Annie all would like to fucking rob ships' tits out, so good for them, you know? Like, there are actual, like, sightings of them and, like, postings of them being like, we knew they were women because we, like, looked up, and right before someone got shot, it was just boobs.
Yeah, which one was it that did
we
that?
knew they were women.
Both of them.
Okay. Because I do remember reading, and I couldn't remember which one. They would show their tits to be like... Because pirates were
kapow.
very... Well, pirates were also super misogynistic, where it's like, you can't be a lady pirate. And then they'd be like, you just got killed by a lady pirate.
What are you going to do about it?
Nothing, because you're
What
dead
are
and
you
my
gonna
tits
do
are
about
out.
it?
So,
Yeah.
you know.
So, the craziness of Bonnie Ann does have to come to a close. In October of 1720, the fun ends when Calico Jack, the ladies, and the crew are attacked by Jonathan Barnett under the commission of the governor of Jamaica. And the whole crew puts up almost no fight because they're far too drunk to swing a sword. As pirates do.
There you go.
Everyone is arrested and sentenced to hang, but Mary and Anne plead their bellies, aka they claim they're purgant. And Brigand and Anne, bless you, Manamana, all the other ones that I can throw in there. So they plead their bellies and they get a stay of execution, and Mary dies in prison, but Anne... Well, Bonnie Ann just disappears. There's no record of her hanging, there's no record of her dying in prison, and there's no record of her release. Her ending is shrouded in as much mystery as her beginning.
That's kind of poetic.
Mysterious.
It is extremely poetic, and it also makes Bonnie Ann the greatest female pirate ever.
I mean, honestly, yeah, it does. Because, like, she never got caught.
Well,
Never
she-
got caught. Well,
she
she
did
got caught
technically.
once, but then
Well, no,
slips
she
off
didn't-
into the night.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. But she didn't stay caught. So.
she didn't suffer any consequences.
He probably pulled, like, that scene from Idiocracy where she's like, no, I'm supposed to be being released today.
Yeah. I mean, there's a bunch of different, like, theories. Some people say that her family, like, bought her release. Other people say that she kind of tricked the guards and let them go. I personally have a fun theory that goes against my gay love story, but I like it anyway, that Bonnie Ann and Mary Read were the same person.
Oh.
Because-
that's spicy.
Well, there's no record of Bonnie Ann ever being born, baptized, or any of the like, and
Ooh.
there's no record of her dying. So my only thought is that it was the same person using different aliases.
This is very spicy.
It's just a thought. I could be completely wrong, but I like to throw a weird one in there.
I like it. I like that.
That's a good one.
I like the conspiracy.
But yeah, it's not a big story because there's a lot of like hearsay about Bonnie Ann, but Bonnie Ann was just a lady who liked to stab, and she was damn good at it, and she stole some money along the way.
There you go.
I think that if you're not living a life that's shrouded hearsay.
You're not doing it right.
You're just like, you're not living right.
You're not.
That's like my goal.
Yeah. I mean,
I want to keep people guessing. I want to die and people be like, I just don't know.
I have already determined that when I do finally shuffle off this mortal coil, I am going to do a thing where all of my money and all of my like will and inheritance does not go to anyone in particular, but rather starts a gigantic scavenger hunt that spans around the world, and the first person to find it gets it.
Yes.
Because that's just as extra as I am, so... But yes, that's my story of Bonnie Ann. She's amazing.
I like the gentleman. I like the crimeswomen.
They're fun. There's some other ones that I've found that I'm just like, wow, holy shit, okay.
Crimesmen and crimeswomen stories.
Yeah, historical crimes people
I like
are great.
the crimeswomen because, like, crimesmen usually either die outrightly or, like, get caught and get killed. Crimeswomen have a tendency of, like, disappearing.
Yeah.
That is true. Yeah, that is true. I like that.
Goodbye. They're like, I've committed heinous acts.
Later.
With my tits out. Goodbye.
Pretty much.
It's usually with their tits out, too.
I know, and that's the best. Like, good for them.
Good for them.
But that was good.
Yeah. There's a lot of good conversations that we had tonight.
It was. We talked a lot, had a lot of deep thoughts.
We did. We should probably do the thing now.
We should probably do the thing. Hey, folks. How you doing? Welcome to the thing. The thing is, you should follow us on our socials, because we'd appreciate that a whole lot. You can find us on Facebook if you look up the Triumvirate Productions. You can find us on Instagram at _Triumvirate_Productions. Or if you're feeling especially saucy, you can come join us on our Patreon. Patreon.com/Triumvirate Productions, where you can join the 1, 2, or 3 strike tiers to get a bunch of different bonuses in each category. If you can't support us monetarily and you already follow us on our socials, well, first off, thanks. And second, tell a friend. We appreciate it when you do tell people because we don't pay for any advertisement, so the only way we get passed around, and boy do we love getting passed around, is by word of mouth. And if you've already told all your friends and they're all like, shut up, we know about this show, give us a rating or review on Apple or Spotify. It helps bump us up the charts so you don't have to tell people about us. The algorithm does it for you. And if you've done all of that, well, you're just a fucking superstar. Thanks, champ. I'm proud of you.
Thank you, audience, for joining us on another episode of What the Fuck History, where we talk about the wackiest and weirdest stories that make you... What the fuck history?